There is a place on Earth where the modern world becomes frighteningly narrow. Not a capital city, not a stock exchange, not a palace, a parliament, or a military headquarters. Just a strip of water between the mountains of Iran and the cliffs of Oman, where the Persian Gulf must squeeze itself toward the Gulf of Oman, the Arabian Sea, and the wider Indian Ocean. This is the Strait of Hormuz. On a map, it can look almost insignificant, a thin blue line at the edge of the Arabian Peninsula. But every day, the invisible machinery of the global economy leans on this line. Tankers loaded with crude oil and liquefied natural gas move through it. Naval vessels watch it, insurers price it, governments calculate around it. Traders react to every rumor of tension near it. And the paradox is brutal. A waterway that is only tens of kilometers wide at its narrowest point helps carry a share of energy so large that a disruption here can echo into gasoline prices, electricity costs, shipping insurance, factory margins, inflation forecasts, and the political stability of countries far beyond the Gulf. Hormuz is not just geography. It is a bottleneck where geography pressures economics, where local tides meet global dependence, and where the calm movement of water hides one of the most sensitive strategic equations in the world. Imagine a supertanker moving slowly through the traffic separation scheme. It may carry enough oil to influence a refinery schedule on another continent. Yet it does not move through an open ocean. It moves through disciplined lanes, watched by radar, satellites, coastal stations, naval patrols, and the nervous attention of energy markets. Around it are mountains, islands, fishing boats, military zones, heat, haze, and the memory of crises that have repeatedly reminded the world how vulnerable this corridor can be. But Hormuz is not only a place of danger, it is also a landscape of red earth. Barren islands, coral reefs, blue water, traditional fishing villages, old maritime routes, and human lives that continue in the shadow of global power. On one side, giant tankers represent the industrial scale of the modern age. On another, fishermen along the coasts of Iran and Oman still read the sea through wind, season, and inherited knowledge. This documentary looks at Hormuz not as a headline, but as a living strategic landscape. We will travel through its geography, its shipping lanes, its energy flows, its islands, its military tension, its local communities, and the strange beauty that exists beside one of the world's most dangerous economic pressure points. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not simply a route ships pass through, it is the throat of the Gulf. And when the throat tightens, the entire body of the global economy feels the pressure. This is the opening truth. The global economy often appears digital, weightless, and distant. But at Hormuz, it becomes physical again. It becomes steel hulls, narrow lanes, salt water, coastal radar, naval caution, and the slow turn of tankers under a punishing sun. That is why the hook must begin with awe, but not fantasy. Hormuz is dramatic because it is real. It is terrifying because it is ordinary most of the time. Its danger is hidden inside routine. The world depends on that routine continuing, day after day, ship after ship, cargo after cargo. If the viewer understands that, the entire journey changes. This is no longer just a map lesson. It becomes a story about how fragile modern power can be when it passes through a narrow place. From a strategic analyst's perspective, this matters because the viewer must understand that the crisis is not only what happens during conflict. The deeper crisis is the permanent dependence built into the system. Even peace is conditional here. Because peace requires constant discipline, coordination, and restraint. The first truth about Hormuz is geographical. The strait connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman, and from there to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. That sounds simple, but the consequences are enormous. The Persian Gulf is surrounded by some of the most important energy-producing states on Earth. Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia all exist within or beside a regional system whose exports depend heavily on maritime access. Hormuz is the gate. If the gate is open, energy moves. If the gate is threatened, markets listen. If the gate is disrupted, the world starts calculating how long inventories can last, how much can be rerouted, how fast prices might rise, and which economies will feel the shock first. From a distance, the strait may seem wide enough. Some descriptions measure the wider passage in dozens of kilometers. But strategic geography is not only about the broad width of water on a map. It is about the usable routes, the depth, the traffic scheme, the political boundaries, the coastline, and the room large vessels actually have to maneuver. That is where the famous paradox appears. The strait is often described as about 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, while other geographic sources describe the broader strait as roughly 55 to 95 kilometers wide. Yet the shipping lanes used by large tankers are far narrower. In the traffic separation scheme, inbound and outbound lanes are only a few kilometers wide, separated by a buffer zone. This means that the most important ships in the global energy system must behave with extraordinary discipline inside a limited corridor. The landscape intensifies that feeling. To the north lies Iran, with the long strategic presence of the Zagros mountain system behind its coastal regions. To the south lies Oman's Musandam Peninsula, a rugged place of limestone cliffs, fjord-like inlets, and rocky headlands that push into the sea like a natural fortress. The water between them is not just a passage, it is a funnel. Funnels are efficient, but they are also vulnerable. They gather movement, they concentrate value, they create predictable routes, and because of that, they turn small shocks into large consequences. A collision, a military incident, a mine threat, a seizure, a drone attack, or even the fear of one of these events can immediately become more than a local problem. It becomes a global signal. This is why Hormuz matters so much to strategic analysts. It demonstrates a hard lesson: the global economy may look diversified and abstract, but it still depends on physical corridors. Oil and gas do not move through confidence alone. They move through ports, pipes, ships, sea lanes, weather windows, choke points, and security arrangements. The modern world often imagines itself as weightless. Hormuz proves it is still heavy. It is heavy with cargo, geography, political risk, and the decisions of captains, coast guards, naval commanders, insurers, traders, and governments. In Hormuz, the map is not background. The map is the trap. The geography also creates a powerful visual story. A camera can start high above the Gulf, where the water seems open, then slowly descend until the viewer realizes the open sea is being forced through one critical mouth. The transition from map to channel to lane is the transition from abstraction to vulnerability. That visual movement is essential. It teaches the audience that the danger of Hormuz is not merely political. It is built into shape, distance, coastline, and the simple fact that the world has arranged a large part of its energy movement through a narrow corridor. The camera should never lose the sense of place. Every statistic must return to a visible image: a tanker lane, a rocky coast, a red island, a fishing harbor, a radar mast, a mountain silhouette, or the heat shimmer over the water. This is how analysis becomes documentary. To understand the tension of Hormuz, imagine scale. A very large crude carrier can be longer than several football fields. It can carry millions of barrels of oil. It does not stop quickly. It does not turn like a small boat. It moves with the slow authority of mass, momentum, and engineering. Yet, when it approaches the Strait of Hormuz, this giant enters a place where the available traffic lanes are measured in only a few kilometers. This is the super narrow paradox. The ships are enormous. The corridor is disciplined. The cargo is globally important. The margin for error feels psychologically small. The traffic separation scheme exists to create order. One lane carries inbound traffic, another carries outbound traffic. Between them is a buffer. On paper, the design is rational and necessary. In reality, it also reveals the vulnerability of the system. The world's energy bloodstream is being organized into narrow streams, each vessel following rules because the cost of chaos would be too high. This is not unusual in maritime navigation. Many straits and canals operate with carefully designed traffic systems. But Hormuz is different because of what passes through it and where it sits. A delay here is not just a delay. It can become a price signal. A warning here is not just a warning. It can become an insurance premium. A military exercise here is not just a local maneuver. It can become a headline across energy desks in Singapore, Tokyo, Seoul, Mumbai, Beijing, London, and New York. The physical image is almost cinematic. A tanker glides through blue-gray water under a hot sky. On the horizon, the land rises dry and severe. Small fishing boats may appear close to the coast, farther away. Naval vessels or patrol aircraft may be present, sometimes visible, sometimes only implied. The vessel continues forward, but every movement is part of a larger choreography. This is where geography and economics meet directly. The global economy wants efficiency. It wants the shortest viable route from Gulf producers to Asian consumers. It wants predictable delivery, stable insurance costs, and reliable schedules. Geography answers with a narrow passage, a contested region, intense heat, strategic islands, military presence, and a limited traffic scheme. That is the contradiction. Hormuz makes global energy trade efficient because it concentrates movement. But the same concentration makes it vulnerable. The route works because so many ships can pass through the same strategic door. The route frightens analysts because so many ships must pass through the same strategic door. No spreadsheet can fully capture the feeling of that vulnerability. It is visible in the wake of a tanker. It is audible in the radio communications of traffic control. It is present in the silence of governments when they monitor the region during a crisis. It is built into the risk models of shipping companies and the memory of every country that depends on imported energy. The super narrow paradox is not just a phrase. It is the reality of giants moving through a corridor that the world cannot afford to lose. For documentary pacing, this block should be slow and heavy. The viewer needs to feel the size of the vessels, the limitation of the lanes, and the calm discipline required to keep the system functioning. The tension is not only in war or crisis, it is in the fact that normal movement itself is astonishing. Every tanker that passes safely through Hormuz is a small victory for navigation, coordination, and restraint. The problem is that the world rarely notices these victories until the possibility of failure appears. Hormuz is powerful because it compresses scales. It compresses local and global, old and modern, natural and industrial, peaceful and militarized. The same water can hold a fisherman's morning, a tanker's schedule, a government's warning, and a market's fear. The second truth about Hormuz is energy dependence. Numbers explain part of it, but not all of it. Around 1/5 of global oil consumption and a major share of liquefied natural gas trade are commonly associated with the strait. That volume is staggering. Yet the deeper issue is not only quantity, it is the lack of a perfect substitute. Hormuz is not merely one route among many equal choices. It is the central maritime artery for a region that contains some of the world's most important oil and gas exporters. The Gulf's energy flows are geographically focused, and the largest importers are heavily concentrated in Asia. China, India, Japan, and South Korea all have deep interests in the stability of this passage. Their factories, power systems, transport networks, and consumer economies are tied, directly or indirectly, to the energy that moves through these waters. For these countries, Hormuz is not an exotic geopolitical topic. It is part of economic breathing. When the strait is stable, energy flows become routine. Tankers are tracked, cargoes are scheduled, contracts are executed, and the system feels normal. When tension rises, the routine becomes fragile. Markets begin asking whether ships will reroute, whether insurers will raise rates, whether naval escorts will increase, whether producers can maintain exports, and whether consumers should prepare for price shocks. There are bypass options. Some oil can move through pipelines that avoid the strait. The United Arab Emirates has routes toward Fujairah on the Gulf of Oman. Saudi Arabia has pipelines toward the Red Sea. Other regional systems have been discussed, expanded, or planned over time. But the strategic reality remains. These alternatives do not erase Hormuz. They reduce risk at the margins. They provide partial relief. They do not perfectly replace the scale, flexibility, and established maritime capacity of the strait. That is why Hormuz retains its power. A truly replaceable route does not create global anxiety. Hormuz creates anxiety because it is partially replaceable, but not fully replaceable. The difference is everything. A modern economy can survive inconvenience. It struggles with sudden large-scale disruption. Energy is not a luxury input. It is embedded in transport, electricity, fertilizer, plastics, manufacturing, food distribution, and national security. When energy costs rise quickly, the effect spreads through the economy in layers. Households feel it. Businesses feel it. Central banks notice it. Governments respond to it. The strait turns geography into inflation risk. It turns a maritime corridor into a macroeconomic variable. It turns a local military incident into a global pricing event. This is why analysts often speak of Hormuz with a seriousness usually reserved for financial crises or military flashpoints. It is both. It is a financial pressure point because energy prices respond to risk. It is a military pressure point because the security of transit depends on regional stability. And it is a political pressure point because the countries most affected are not only the countries on the shores of the Gulf. Hormuz teaches that the global economy is interconnected, but not evenly. Some places matter more than their size suggests. Some narrow passages carry consequences wider than continents. Hormuz is one of those places. From a strategic analyst's perspective, this matters because the viewer must understand that the crisis is not only what happens during conflict. The deeper crisis is the permanent dependence built into the system. Even peace is conditional here, because peace requires constant discipline, coordination, and restraint. Whenever tension rises in Hormuz, a familiar question returns. Can the world simply bypass the strait? The answer is partly yes, but strategically no. Pipelines, storage systems, alternative ports, and emergency reserves all matter. They are essential parts of resilience. They can soften shocks, support exports, and give governments more options during a crisis. But they do not remove the basic problem. The volume that normally moves through Hormuz is too large, too routine, and too deeply built into global trade patterns to be replaced instantly. This is the difference between theoretical capacity and operational reality. A pipeline may exist, but it may not carry the right grade, the right volume, at the right time, to the right market. A port may be available, but shipping schedules, terminal capacity, storage, insurance, and contract obligations may not adjust overnight. Strategic reserves may cover temporary shortages, but they are not a permanent substitute for continuous trade. Rerouting can happen, but longer routes increase costs and time. The world has options, but it does not have an effortless escape. This matters because markets price not only actual disruption, but the fear of disruption, even before a full closure. The perception of risk can raise costs. Insurance premiums can climb. Tanker availability can tighten. Shipping companies may hesitate. Buyers may seek alternative cargoes. Governments may issue warnings. Military forces may increase patrols. Each measure is rational by itself, but together they show how quickly the system becomes tense. Hormuz is therefore not only a physical choke point, it is a psychological choke point. The strait can affect prices before it is fully blocked. It can move markets through threat, uncertainty, and expectation. In energy markets, the future matters almost as much as the present. If traders believe tomorrow's supply is at risk, today's price begins to change. This is why a single incident near Hormuz can be amplified. A small military encounter may not stop shipping. A seizure may involve only one vessel. A warning may be political theater. But each event enters a region already loaded with strategic meaning. The market does not only ask what happened, it asks what might happen next. That question is expensive. In this sense, Hormuz is a case study in modern vulnerability. The world has built a complex system with backups, but not with complete independence from geography. The more efficient the system becomes, the more sensitive it can become to concentrated risk. Efficiency reduces cost in normal times. Redundancy protects survival in abnormal times. Hormuz reminds us that the modern energy system still struggles to balance both. To say the world cannot go around Hormuz does not mean there are no alternatives. It means the alternatives are incomplete. They are detours, not replacements. And in a crisis, a detour can buy time, but it cannot always buy calm. The camera should never lose the sense of place. Every statistic must return to a visible image: a tanker lane, a rocky coast, a red island, a fishing harbor, a radar mast, a mountain silhouette, or the heat shimmer over the water. This is how analysis becomes documentary. Hormuz is not only a corridor of oil, it is also a landscape of astonishing geological beauty. Hormuz Island, just off the Iranian coast, is famous for red ochre, salt formations, colorful soils, and hills that can appear painted in red, orange, yellow, island's red earth is rich in iron oxide, giving parts of the landscape a surreal intensity. In certain light, the ground looks almost volcanic, almost Martian, as if the same place that carries the world's energy anxiety also holds a hidden planet of color. This is one of the most powerful visual contrasts in the documentary. The strait is often discussed in the language of risk, closure, oil prices, naval power, and strategic leverage. Yet nearby, the land itself is a gallery of deep time. Rocks carry chemical histories older than modern politics. Salt domes and mineral layers reveal the slow violence of geology. The colors of the island speak a language very different from the language of markets. A tanker passing near Hormuz Island belongs to the present. The island beneath the sun belongs to a much older clock. For a travel/amazing places documentary, this contrast is essential. It prevents the story from becoming only strategic analysis. It allows the viewer to feel the place, not just understand the risk. The camera can move from the steel body of a tanker to a red beach, from a radar screen to a mineral ridge, from satellite maps to footsteps on colored soil. This is how the strait becomes cinematic. Hormuz Island also reminds us that geography has more than one kind of value. Strategic value is one, economic value is another. Ecological and geological value are different but equally real. A place can be important because ships move through it, and also because its landforms are rare. Its marine ecosystems are delicate, and its human history is layered. The waters around the strait support marine life, coral habitats, fisheries, and coastal livelihoods. These ecosystems exist beside some of the busiest and most politically sensitive shipping traffic in the world. That coexistence is fragile. Oil movement, coastal development, warming waters, pollution, and heavy maritime activity all create pressure on the marine environment. So the beauty of Hormuz is not separate from its vulnerability. The red island, the blue water, the limestone cliffs of